If you drive a car, I'll tax the street. If you try to sit, I'll tax your seat. If you get too cold, I'll tax the heat. If you take a walk, I'll tax your feet. Taxman. And that is a lyrical quote from a band that was quite popular decades before Hamish was born, known as the Beatles. And welcome to the House Einstein podcast. I'm your host, Osman Parvez. With me is Hamish Crabb, and this is House Einstein podcast 116.
Yeah. All 116 of them.
You make it sound like that's a lot, Hamish. I was just showing Leah the other day at a Joe Rogan podcast. We were listening to the interview with Snoop, and it was over 1,100 that podcast number was. So, we haven't even touched the surface of podcasting. Even though we've been doing it for quite a while, we're only on 116. We got a long way to go.
Say that agent that you were looking at in California, I think they're only at 75. So we've got them beat.
Okay. Agent I was looking at for referral, I should add to that context for what Hamish is talking about. But let's walk you through what we're going to be talking about in today's House Einstein podcast. First, let's start with the mission. The brokerage which sponsors this podcast, the House Einstein Brokerage, the mission there is to help you make a smarter real estate decision, and you can find out more about that at houseeinstein.com. I've been doing this for well over 20 years. Hamish has been doing this for four plus years, and we support a small boutique brokerage here in Boulder that was founded in 2013, and a lot of our content tends to be real estate related, but if you are not a client of the brokerage, we would encourage you not to make any decisions on the basis of anything you hear in this podcast. If you are a client or would like to become a client, reach out to us at houseeinstein.com. You'll find our contact information, and we're more than happy to advise you about your specific situation. But otherwise, do not make any decisions. This podcast is entertainment. And our topics this week are going to include the closing table. That's our core table, our core topic for the week. And for those of you who pay attention to what's happening in the city, you recently learned that our city has a giant backlog of maintenance on its buildings. 500 million is what the city staff are estimating we have to cope with, and very little budget in order to address all of those shortfalls in maintenance. So we're going to be diving into that a little bit, and hence the opening about the taxman, because as you can imagine, that's almost certainly what Boulder is eyeing to make up its funding shortfall. Yeah. And for our Tales from the Trenches segment, we're going to talk about a walkthrough that was a little wetter than most before closing last week, but we got through it. We were just actually working on some playful content to put on our socials about that walkthrough that started off playful, then suddenly took a dark turn when we realized there was a problem in that house. So that's our Tales from the Trenches segment. And then we're noticing a lot of our colleagues are putting out data, and often when I run the analysis side by side with their content on one screen and the MLS on the other, the data doesn't always line up with what they're saying. So this week we're going to do a walkthrough of the residential market for single-family houses in Boulder County by price range, and talk about what's happening at the upper end of the market, where it's really quite shocking how that market has shifted. So we will talk about that. And we've got six properties in our sales of the week. I don't know if we're going to get through all six because we are a little bit time constrained today, but I'll walk you through the addresses, and hopefully we'll get to talk about all of these. And as a reminder, we are allowed to talk about sold listings in a public forum, any public forum, but we're not allowed to talk about active listings. And so the only place we talk about active listings in a critical way is on or in our newsletter that is put out usually every other week. This week I have one due, and that's called the Fresh Listings Newsletter, and you'll find it at houseeinstein.com. search around a little bit, you'll see a link to sign up for it. And that's designed for prospective clients or others that want our unvarnished opinion, but the Real Estate Commission and the MLS are very clear about making disparaging remarks about listings that are actively on the market. So we're not allowed to do that publicly, so we only talk about sold listings on the pod. But if you want the skinny on the active stuff, go visit our website, sign up for the newsletter, or frankly, become a client, because that's when we'll actually go out with you and talk about active listings relative to your specific purchase or sale that you're trying to execute on. So we really get granular on the market. But this week we're talking about sold listings, and our first one is 1498 King Ave. And we're also going to talk about 9258 Niwot Hills Drive, 2235 Vassar Drive in Table Mesa, and 4195 Chippewa in Fraser Meadows, 665 Tamarisk in Louisville, and 345 South 38th Street, a property we actually had under contract at one point. But our buyers decided to exit from it. We'll talk about what happened in that deal and what it eventually sold for. That's our Sales of the Week segment. And then we've got a little bit of shameless self-promotion. We're gonna tease you with our new website a little bit. So stay tuned for that. Before we hit the news, and boy, there's some hot news this week. IEDs, or improvised explosive devices, found near Nederland and on the road near Nederland. Dark Horse has announced its new location, and apparently there will be some student housing nearby. We're going to be talking about the state bills to allow for lot splitting with much smaller lots, and how Boulder is seeking an exemption for certain parts of our community, which is sort of at odds with the Boulder Valley Comp Plan. So this is such an interesting, mixed bag of messaging for lot splitting. But newsflash, if you weren't here for our heavy discussion about the comp plan, the writing's on the wall. And in fact, the comment period just closed. We're going to be talking about how the new comp plan really is a sea change in mindset towards development in the city of Boulder. And what's going to be happening now is lot sizes being reduced, and other regulations that restrict development are also going to go out the window. So we're going to see what happens. But we'll be talking about this new House bill, and then metro districts in the city of Boulder, which also is all about development, right? It's all about raising capital to fund development, the infrastructure for development. We're going to talk about the new council approval to allow metro districts within the city, and then breaking news. We're gonna talk a little bit about the easing, well, if we have time. Okay.
On a lighter note is what we're trying to.
I don't know if this is a lighter note, but the DOJ is expected to ease marijuana restrictions as soon as today, reclassifying marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 drug. And I think that actually is relevant because Colorado was one of the first states to legalize or decriminalize marijuana, and it had a lot of impact in our community, some of which was quite visible and obvious, others that were not quite so obvious. But it was the post-marijuana decriminalization period was like the Wild West here when it came to real estate. So we're going to talk a little bit about that breaking news before we hit our carve-outs. And Hamish, you're talking about the very exciting topic of home networking.
Oh, yeah.
And you're talking about data network. You're not talking about meeting new people at your home.
Not meeting new people. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Even more exciting. Yep.
You're going to be talking about data networking. What networking are you discussing?
That's right. Yeah, I've come into some cool home routing equipment and access points and security cameras and stuff with a particular brand, and I'll talk about my experience with that and my plans going forwards on the journey of home ownership here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm going to be talking about something a little bit really left field. Just celebrated a birthday and had a fantastic weekend, so I'm just going to do a little weekend recap, including attending one of my childhood, I don't know if I call it hero, but an artist that dramatically
everybody knew him. Yeah.
Influenced my, ushering into adulthood. I think his first album really hit the market when I was 16 years old. So that is something, and I just attended a show of his at Red Rock. So that's our carve-out segment. Carve-outs, if I didn't mention it, are when we talk about anything other than real estate. just happens to be top of mind for us. And that is our table of contents. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. Hamish, let's get into it. This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more.
Let's do it. Closing table. I was thinking it's pied-à-terre tax, but we're looking at kind of more or less tax strategies as an overall effort to kind of what Boulder might do to fix the shortfall. Is that more or less the look here?
Well, so let me frame it up. The city has 75 buildings, and of those, 15 have critical needs for renovation or replacement, and the dollar amount that is needed to fix our infrastructure now exceeds $500 million, and we have funding of 100, which means that we have $400 million of unfunded capital expenditure needs in the city for our existing infrastructure. And in classic city fashion, and I'm going to be critical here of staff and council, there is zero accountability for how we ended up here. And there's only a push for, well, we're going to need to raise money to take care of it. Like, these funding needs are legitimate. We have to raise $400 million to pay for it. And somehow we didn't reserve for this, right? So as an investor, I maintain reserves for the buildings that we own, and I grow those reserves in order to pay for maintenance when it's time to pay for maintenance. You can defer maintenance only so long before it catches up with you, and then you have an even bigger bill to pay. And a well-run association, people hate associations, but a well-managed one should have adequate reserves. That's why you look for a reserve study as part of your due diligence, or we advise strongly. We hold the hand of our client to look through and make sure that we ask this question: you're buying into a community. Does that community have adequate reserves to pay for all of its infrastructure? And is it reserving, saving money for the rainy day when it needs to do that at an adequate rate? And so many people look at the HOA dues and say, okay, well, the HOA dues are really high, but they don't think about what they're buying into. You could be buying into millions of dollars of reserves and a very well-managed community. Yeah. Or you could have a cheap HOA that is just going to hit you up with a special assessment, which is a mismanaged HOA. And the city of Boulder is clearly just like a really mismanaged HOA, where rather than reserving for the future and being conservative with its fiscal management, it is hitting up the owners, the taxpayers in the city, for large sums of money. This is a shot across the bow that the city is going to look for us to find a way to pay for $400 million of maintenance and repairs on 75 buildings. And of course, it's not going to look for ways to cut staff. It's not going to look for ways to save money on programming. It's only going to look for ways to tax, or primarily, I should say, it's primarily going to look for ways to tax our residents. And the reason we had a lot of conversation about pied-à-terre, the sort of second home concept, that's a cute acronym or cute phrase that it basically means having your foot on the ground, right? In French, it's having like a little flat in a city, but you live out in the country. It's kind of an aristocratic, a little bit of a slip on that one, kind of thing, right? And so Mamdani just announced that they're going to look to tax owners that are not residents of the city, so second homes that are valued over $5 million that are in Manhattan, at a very high tax rate in order to raise approximately $500 million. It could be as much as $650, which conveniently is also very similar to the amount of money the city of Boulder is looking for. But the city of Boulder is a city of 100,000-ish people, 107,000 people, of which a large portion are students. So it is inevitable, okay, that we're going to look for mechanisms, including a second home tax, vacant commercial property tax, and transfer taxes. So that transfer tax, by the way, is already in the documents that DORA, our regulator, puts out for realtors to use in Colorado. It's a checkbox. So it's literally that easy for the city to turn on a transfer tax. And other communities, particularly wealthy communities, often put in transfer taxes. Like Nantucket, where I used to live and work and got started in real estate, has a land bank fee. And that land bank fee just grows this huge fund in order to acquire properties for conservation primarily. And so the city is going to do the same thing, but they're not going to do it for conservation. In fact, they're looking at potentially selling or developing some of our public land. We've already seen the city admit to that in our public meetings. They're absolutely going to look for additional ways to raise revenue. That it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And I'm just waiting for this to occur. So two things are happening. One is they're going to grow the base of housing, develop the city with much higher density, using some of these metro tax districts as a funding mechanism to allow for even more commercial development. And part of that is to pay for this backlog. So it's a combination of growth, and it's a combination of taxing second homes, taxing transfers, and looking for other types of funding mechanisms for which they have control. And they're going to navigate, of course, they're going to have to navigate Tabor and other state level mandates for what the city can possibly do. But if you look, linked in this article is an opinion piece by Mark Wallach and Ryan Suchard. And Mark, who's been on council for a very long time, of course, he's not owning it, right? So this is so funny. When you read this article, and I want to find this quote for you, okay? How did we get here? They write, I should say, since both of them are the authors. Well, our current situation is not an uncommon one for municipalities. And I'm going to argue, yes, it is. It's an uncommon. It's uncommon for mismanaged municipalities, but well-managed municipalities are not sitting on a $500 million backlog. Like, my question is, how much is Longmont sitting on, which is a similar sized city with a similar sized budget? I doubt it's 500 million. Okay, so how did we get here? Yeah, our current situation is not uncommon. Infrastructure spending is often the stepchild of budgetary decisions, routinely prioritized after new programs and services. Well, why is that the case? It's because the staff who benefit the most from creation of new programs and services are the ones presenting it, and they're often not even the ones paying any taxes into the city because they don't even live in the city. City councils like to make the lives of their residents better, and that often means elevating spending for projects that have visible results in the near term over investments to keep buildings and other physical assets in first-rate condition over time. And then this is the best part. Are past city councils to blame? No. All city councils, including the current one, are responsible. No one gets a pass. But this council, this city manager, and this staff have begun to move in a different direction, one that recognizes the fundamental importance of bringing our many buildings up to modern standards and keeping them that way into the future. So they're basically saying, yes, all past city councils and the current council are responsible. Okay, well, it's such a weird wording that it starts with no and all city councils, but I think that's what he's saying. But the part that that really is infuriating, Hamish, and I'm going to get off my little soapbox after I say this, is that if you look in the all-in cost of the Alpine Balsam project, which isn't even close to complete, which is mostly just city staff offices, which don't generate tax, okay? That project is nearing $200 million. And maybe even more than $200 million when it's all in, when the full costs to deconstruct and build Alpine Balsam out, it's roughly a $200 million project or slightly more. And that's half of our backlog cost that is not funded today. And you may not have been here, Hamish, when they made the decision to buy Alpine Balsam. There was not a public process. The council unilaterally decided to spend $200 million of the city's money without getting voter approval to expend that kind of capital. And there's been zero accountability from council for that. And that's what we live with today. And it looks like more mismanagement ahead. But rather than tighten our belt and focus on priorities, they want to, instead of focusing on priorities that benefit the city's residents, like the South Boulder Rec Center, they want to kill the rec center, and they just want to increase taxes to cover the cost of these types of I don't know, fiscal recklessness. All right, I'm sort of rambling at this point. I think it's your turn, Hamish. As the young counterpoint to this, what do you think?
I mean, it's not, at least from what I know, is like, there are definitely city councils in the past that look at public services as an expense that shouldn't be paid in general. And I know people, too, that are like, well, the shortfall in maintenance is just politics, right? They just want more money. So that's a kind of a very common complaint, and so people want less taxes, and so they don't want to pay for this infrastructure, and you get this kind of build-up effect to where you have a $400 million shortfall. I'll also say, too, it's not like they need to cut a check for $400 million today, right? They've gone and counted their eggs and said, okay, we're going to need about $400 million. We can start planning this, right? It's not like we need this to happen right now, right this second. So I don't think there's like this huge urgency about it. I know we're looking at like South Boulder Rec Center, which I think also is calculated within that. And then there's things like, you know, they mentioned in that same article that there's a fire station that's literally occupying a single family home. And modern needs are different and costs increase. So it's very possible that this cost could have been foreseen. But then there's also plenty of pressures where people believe that it's just politics when you have these departments asking for more money then and now, getting ignored because people believe it's just theatrics, and then now there's a $400 million deficit, right, to the infrastructure budget. So this has to have been a long time coming, but there's a general sentiment in which public services don't need more money, but the world keeps churning and things keep expanding and costs just increase. That's kind of what it is. And I think more and more people are becoming acceptant to that, especially with the insane inflation that we've seen since 2020. It's kind of like it's starting to catch up now. And yeah, for sure, Boulder is going to try and get crafty with ways to tax and ways to generate more money to come up with it. I don't necessarily, is it $400 million annually? Or is it just $400 million to bring all these buildings up to standard?
It's a total of $400 million. It's not $400 million annually. And I agree with you that fire stations, public service buildings are critical for our community, right? And I would argue rec centers are critical for quality of life as well. But it's not like these things didn't exist in 2015 and need funding. And in 2015, the city committed to spending over $200 million on the Alpine Balsam project. And how different would our economic picture be today if we hadn't have done that? And the big fear was we couldn't let it fall to private development. And the city decided to become a developer of its own and was caught unaware of the massive mitigation that that was required for all the asbestos in that old hospital building. Yeah. And so it's a massive and expensive project that probably should not have been undertaken. And and at the same time, 10 years later, we're looking at a situation where there's a $400 million backlog for our existing inventory or portfolio of buildings, and they're warning us in these articles, this editorial. It's a warning, it's a shot across the bow that we're gonna have to raise taxes somehow. And those taxes are likely going to be increased in a variety of ways. Sales taxes are primarily how the city gets revenue, not property taxes, but they are going to look for alternatives. I mean, there's a reason that they've been so hungrily looking at Sundance and how they can raise tax revenue from the festival housing license. Like, they recognize that there's going to be 80,000 people in the city for that 10-day period or so, almost 2 weeks, I think. And during that time period, a lot of owners are going to rent their houses. So it sort of reminds me of, like, I don't know, that scene in The Godfather where the first the original, like the Don Fiducci or whatever the guy's name is in like the 1940s, wants to shake down like Vito Corleone, who's in his 20s, and he's like, I need to dip my beak in your profit if you want to continue to exist. That's how he describes it, is dipping his beak. And I'm like, well, that sounds a lot like the city, right? Anytime there's an event that potentially brings in a lot of influx of people and tourist dollars, they're going to look for ways to extract value from it as their first priority, rather than the first priority being how do we create an extremely successful event for all of the participants that come into our city. How can we host those people in a way that is gracious and is an amazing event? Like, rather than focusing on the quality of the event and how to partner with Sundance, they're focusing on how we can raise as much money as possible from this event. And it just feels like, for somebody that's lived in their community for over 20 years, it's been a gradual decline in a lot of the quality of life of our city because of density increasing, the number of people increasing, and then despite more people living here, the basic infrastructure, like anybody that drives out of the city of Boulder on a regular basis and then comes back into the city will tell you it's shocking how bad our roads are compared to a lot of other communities in Boulder. There's a reason I've given up on driving like a low slung car with thin tires on it, low profile tires, because it's pothole city in the city. It's really just drive to Longmont and it's shockingly better how much nicer the roadways are, how much cleaner the community can be. Not everywhere, but in a lot of places. And that's a city of a similar size with a similar budget. So I guess what I'm looking for in my rant, and I'll get off my rant in a second, is some level of accountability, particularly from council members who were here when that decision was made, staff that were here when that decision was made to acquire Alpine Balsam, and instead there's no acknowledgement of that. It's just a warning that we're going to be looking for a lot of ways to raise more money because we have to fund $400 million. And this is the interesting part. They say cutting staff positions would have no material impact on the funding of our infrastructure needs. Like, this is just complete fallacy, right? Like,
I mean, it wouldn't, right? Like, you look at what staff costs are, and then you do the math, right? And same with like Alpine Balsam, like Alpine Balsam, not paid for outright, being estimated when completed $200 million, right? So not all that money has been spent. Yeah, over 200, but you're still at a $200 million deficit on the buildings, right? So like your perspective is super baked, and baked in. You've been, sorry, you've been like living in Boulder forever, and I get where you're coming from. But hindsight's 2020, and like I've heard people gripe about public services asking for money beforehand or trying to fundraise and make money, and I like, it's like, well, at what point are things going to be reaching ahead? Also, for what it's worth, dude, like I live in Westminster and drive to Boulder and US 36, that corridor and everything, to me, have the better roads. If I go elsewhere, especially like out east and stuff, like it's shockingly bad, or down in I-25. Boulder's generally pretty clean and good looking.
Okay, well, we could argue about Boulder's roads. My sense of the city of Boulder roads are horrifically bad. Some of the county roads are great, but the city is not doing a great job of maintaining things. It takes a really long time to see a pothole get filled in. And it's often many years that there's a broken roadway that is just not being repaired. With that said, let's go back to this cutting staff positions, whether that's something they should do or not. And I agree that 1 year's salary is not what we're talking about. Like 1 year's salary for somebody making $80,000 to $120,000 a year, which is probably in the ballpark for typical staffers at the city. I don't have that number in front of me, but let's just say that's the case. Right? It's not just their salary. It's the money that we spend on the programming. It's also the money that we spend on their equipment. If you drive around the city, you're going to see a lot of virtually brand new EVs and other vehicles that are special purpose for staffers to drive around in to do their jobs. And I've never seen a city of 100,000 people with this big of a fleet of city vehicles. It's just I've not done a study. This is an anecdotal observation. I'm like, oh, look, it's another unique custom labeled EV for that particular staffer to have that particular program to deliver that particular service. And that budget just keeps growing over time. So in the course of a 10-year period, that $100,000 person is a $1 million salary. That doesn't include their benefits. That doesn't include the vehicle. That doesn't include the office that we had to build for them at Alpine Balsam, because they don't like the old office that they were working in before. Like, we just keep growing. And one of the biggest areas of growth seems to be affordable housing. And I love that we have a goal for affordable housing. We've increased that goal, but affordable housing doesn't pay for itself, right? Because you're taking a discounted rent, and these are rentals primarily, where's the money to afford the staff if we have a very low level rent? Like, it's not a program that pays for itself. It's being supported by other programs.
Rental licenses largely fund it, yeah.
By the general fund. I don't know if rental licenses so far have been cheap, but expect them to go up, Hamish, because the city's got bills to pay, right?
But yeah,
it's
that's
sort of like,
the seminar that I took with Barha in the city of Boulder. Rental licenses and other rental license, like Sundance, will also go towards like the affordable housing fund, and they do.
oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, my point is that this is a real warning sign for people that are in the city of Boulder, is expect things to get more expensive. And do not expect the city to tighten its belt in any way, because the city is not prone to do that. And the staff, the council itself is saying to you, cutting staff positions have no impact, which is a fallacy. And then they're saying this is not the time or place to review tax measures under consideration. We're merely arguing that renovated rec centers do not magically appear. They must be paid for, and we do not have hidden sources of revenue to make that happen. That's a direct quote, and that is a quote that admits their mismanagement, because these buildings also don't magically appear. They've been here for a really long time, and if the city was well managed, and this is directed right at staff, if the staff were doing their job properly, they would have reserve studies, and this would be part of our budgetary process every year. We wouldn't be expanding programs unless we can pay to maintain our existing programs, and that includes things like the rec centers. So there needs to be some accountability of staff and council, and instead they're just saying we're not cutting staff, we need to find money, and it's just this make-believe that they had no responsibility for where the position we are in today. And that's the part that I'm just livid about, if you can't tell. I'm emotional about this because It's like joining an HOA and suddenly getting a special assessment for $5,000 when you didn't realize that the city has been mismanaging itself for decades.
Or that HOA has been mismanaging itself.
Right.
But I just, like, we talked about this I think last year when they released their budget, and I was talking about like fire stations need to be improved and that needs more money. And you were upset about that, and then you're advocating here for, because you said it was politics. You were like, of course they're going to put that front and center.
I don't remember. Upset about fire stations. Was I upset about fire stations, Heyman?
You're upset that they needed more money, right? Because you're like, why can't you just be scrappy and figure it out? And I was like, well, for example, the fire station right by me, I think it's Fire Station 4 or something in Westminster. They, when I was taking their survey, posted pictures of the inside of the garages. And they're like, there are now modern techniques and equipment and things that we require that didn't exist when this building was bought or built, right? So firefighting as a service has changed, and so the buildings need to be brought up to that to be able to accommodate it. The pictures that they shared showed literally like the lockers and then the fire engines, you had maybe 3 feet between them. And the lockers for the firefighters to have their stuff, and it's just completely crammed full of crap, because that's the amount of stuff that they need in order to do their jobs more functionally. And there's a whole nother thing is you can look into why the cost of like fire engines have gotten so expensive and why they're so outdated. And I'm not going to go into it, but that's a whole nother thing. And so like there's among the private sector kind of a sentiment where it's like, if you can get a city contract or a government contract, you can take them for all it's worth. And that's just been going on, right? I mean, you can look at defense spending on a federal level. This continues to happen down into the city level. And so these costs are going to keep rising. That's kind of given. When you're like, well, you cut a staffer, let's cut programs. I don't necessarily think cutting programs to save others is a correct move either. That's like a step backwards.
But Hamish, I feel like we need to have like a prioritization of our programs. Like for sure, fire departments within the city that are funded by the general fund and sales taxes, they need to be operational and efficient. Absolutely top priority. But there's a lot of programs that are not top priority or should not be top priority. And they're feel-good programs that we like to pass without actually discussing where's the money coming from. And it's fiscally reckless to create a debt obligation of $400 million on a city of 100,000 people. It is clearly growth of programs that drove that. And so they admit to that in the article. It's easy to say yes to new programs, but it's mismanagement, and there's zero ownership of that mismanagement. And I feel like they all need to be voted out. And we need some people that are adults that understand a budget and that run this city in a fiscally prudent way and prioritize things like fire stations, but also rec centers, because rec centers
rec centers for sure.
They're beneficial to our community in so many ways. And when things get tight, typically staff in many cities will go after the programs that are most near and dear to the residents' hearts, because that's where they know they can squeeze the residents for more money, but they're not cutting the programs that aren't particularly beneficial to our community. And I don't have a list of all the city's programs, but you don't need that list of all the programs. Yeah. The fact they have a $400 million backlog of a debt obligation, right? It's a debt that we have to pay. We haven't raised the money. Like, I'm not talking about debt issuance. I'm talking about we have created an obligation of $400 million, and we have zero accountability for that at all. And that's the part that tells you alone that we are mismanaged. You don't even need to know all the programs. All you need to know is we owe $400 million in backlog, and the city is not currently maintaining our equipment and our buildings in a way that's sustainable. That just tells you everything you need to know about how our city is currently being run. It would be like, Hamish, let me just put it in a different way. It'd be like you're in the dating market and you meet this beautiful person that you want to go on dates with. Hold on, let me just finish the example and then you could beat it up. And this person, it's all going really well and good, and then like on the fourth or fifth date you figure out that they, maybe they have an income of $80,000 or $50,000 a year, but they have $500,000 of college loans and they've made zero payments in the last 15 years. And they're really a lovely human being. But now you're considering a long-term partnership with this person, but they have been financially. I mean, it's one thing to excuse a young person, okay, that didn't know and went to college and incurred a bunch of debt. It's a whole nother thing when the entire city is being run like there's no tomorrow and buildings don't need maintenance and repairs or updating. And that's where we are today, because there was a $400 million gap. We managed to save 100, which means we reserved 20%.
Identified funding for 100 million. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we have 20% of, instead of 105% of funding in reserves.
Mm. Well, I lost my point on the dating analogy. So
you don't get the point.
No, I had something to say, and then the dating analogy.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you take on the date, even knowing that they come with a financial obligation. That if you're married,
I think.
Yep. Go ahead.
They're projecting maintenance costs and everything to these buildings, and there's without a doubt a budget for maintenance and whatnot on this. Also, wouldn't these buildings of this building portfolio, wouldn't Alpine Balsam replace some of these for them to be able to be sold?
I mean, that sounds like a great idea. That's not what Mark Wallach and Ryan Suchard are saying. They're saying we have a $400 million shortfall. I would assume that takes into account the new building at Alpine Balsam and the ability to potentially sell some of these old buildings. But I don't know. They aren't saying that. So I mean, they're saying we're talking about $400 million, and they're not telling us at all what the trade-off is. But that would be one of the first things I would want to say is shut down some of these old buildings, sell them.
Like the buildings on Iris, right? Iris and Broadway? When they're getting rid of those?
Those are county buildings.
Okay, yeah.
So you're talking about the ball fields?
Yeah, that's right.
Is also
that's county.
Massively contested. The county wants to sell it to a developer, and the community wants its ball fields. So that's going to be interesting.
I know, we covered it on a pod, but that's county. There was a note also in this article where it goes, federal and state funding for various services have declined. And that's a reality, too. The state's in a deficit. Anywhere blue is getting federal funding frozen. The furlough for NOAA just ended because some funding was freed up. So there's a kind of a wild card in the budgeting process, too, isn't there?
I mean, it's a complex problem, but it starts from a simple premise, and that is live within your means. And as a city, you should expect us to live within our means. And when we have to issue debt to fund, with bonds to fund a big project, we do that. But once again, we need to live within the means of that project to pay off the bonds, right? Like we did a whole bunch of new schools. This is coming from a different funding source.
Shit,
BVSD,
and then
right?
BVSD is going to be...
And then years later, like just a few years later, we're talking about shutting down some of those schools. And this is just examples of municipal or quasi-governmental, in the case of BVSD, mismanagement. And it would not surprise me if there is graft, knowing the numbers and how financing mechanisms work for muni bonds. There are very large fees that are paid to the bankers. And I doubt there's any backdoor accountability to see if there are very large kickbacks paid back to staff. Because it doesn't make sense to me why we spend more money on brand new buildings, but we don't increase salaries for teachers. Like we'll do a massive bond issuance for a brand new building and then shut down that building in a few years, but we're not paying the teachers more, which is what we should be doing. And so if we can afford the bond payments to pay for the building, why can't we afford to pay the teachers more? I could tell you the kids are out of that building in 6 or 8 years or whatever, 4 years for high school. Like this is not going to radically make their life not great to not be in a new building, but it could be transformative for the teachers to get paid 20% more a year. But why does that not happen? And the only answer I have is that there's a lot of money in new buildings. And there's a lot of money for construction companies, and construction is notorious for graft. There's a huge amount of money.
Is graft like another word for kickback?
I mean, it's corruption, right? Kickback is one form of graft.
Type of deal.
Construction is
dude.
Notorious for it. And the fees that the muni bond bankers make are massive. And there's not a lot of competition, by the way, in that field. I happen to know a little bit about it from my MBA and post-MBA years and the connections with Wall Street from my school. I was shocked at the size of the fees and how there's not much competition on those fees, the percentages they take of the bond issuance. They don't get paid by the hour, Hamish. You think realtors make a lot of money. Look at the fees investment bankers charge. And you're telling me that those massive amounts of fees don't somehow get kicked back to some of these staffers that greenlight these projects? I don't see the transparency. It would not shock me. I'm not saying it exists, but it would not shock me if it does.
I'm not in disagreement at all that there's inflated pricing going on here. At all. Like, I completely agree with that. And I believe that within that inflation, there is for sure some shady business going on. There's no but. We're going to talk about later on in the news about this shrinking lot sizes deal thing going on. I commented that developers are going to love that because they sure as will. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there appears to be endless demand to live in the most desirable places in our country and our state, which includes Boulder. So shrinking the lot size to 1,200 square feet and allowing everyone to subdivide will magically increase the population, which will also increase the tax revenue for sales tax, which increases the size of our city staff and our government and bureaucracy. So of course they're for it. And so we have now ranted about this for 40 minutes, Hamish, and I feel like I probably have ranted more than I should have, and also may have misspoke on a few things. So I may have to make a corrective podcast for this one. But I'm just furious at the lack of ownership and the lack of a plan to address this funding shortfall by our city, other than increased taxes.
For what it's worth, too, being like, are past councils at fault? No, we all are. That doesn't do any ownership either when it's shared, right? It dilutes the whole accountability of it. So, yeah, I'm with you on that.
Well, Ryan Shusard, I think, is relatively new to council. I don't remember when Wallach joined, but I don't know if he was here for the Alpine Balsam decision. Maybe you can look that up. But if he was, he's directly... he's taking very little ownership. He's spreading it out among all of council. And I'm going to say, no, it's staff actually wagging the dog, putting these things in front of council and not managing our city in a way that is financially prudent.
Yeah. Yeah, both of them, 2023 for Ryan and 2025 for Mark.
Well, 2025 was not his first year. He's been on council for a while.
Oh, I've got term years. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Why do I feel like his name has been he's been here and on council for
very possible I'm looking at the wrong thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then Ryan's last... Yeah, okay, it's his active term year. Anyway, we need to move on.
Okay. Well, we're not going to attack individual council people any more than we currently have, but they honestly need to get their act together. Okay, let's move on. We're not going to get any more into New York City's taxes. We put that into the show notes, but I'm not going to go any further. Let's do Tales from the It's time for Tales for the Trenches, Hamish.
Yeah, and this one, pretty dang fresh, but I'm really excited for the video to come out, and I think I'll link it in the description here. But walkthroughs are very typically a formality more than anything else until they're not. And I think it's there's some quote about how you react when things go unexpected that says everything about who you are, or yada yada. And we recently were put to the test on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add a little bit to that. If you're new to the real estate transaction process, right before closing, you do a walkthrough. Yeah. And at the walkthrough, you're looking to make sure the property is in the condition it was when you wrote the offer, and anything that was included in the contract is in the house. And there's no new damage of any kind, right? That's what you're checking for. And in Colorado, it's not just, it is in the contract. Buyer has a right to do a walkthrough prior to closing. And most of the time, what Hamish means by saying it's a formality is that nothing happens. We're in and out of the house in 15 minutes. We check everything's in there. Yep, it's in there. And we go to closing. And we had a closing last week on a property that did not go as expected.
Almost.
We started by recording tongue-in-cheek. Look, the bathroom's there. The toilets are there. The sink's there. The fridge is there. And because the house looked great. And at the very last minute, it was our client who opened the door to the crawl space. And lo and behold, there was a puddle there on top of the plastic, and it turned out the water heater had a fitting that had started leaking. But it was quite a bit of water, and suddenly we went from teasing, let's head to closing, to stop the presses, stop everything. This needs to be figured out right now if we're going to close. And the listing agent and the seller showed up, honestly, within like 20 minutes. And we worked out
seller first.
And it honestly, I think this is one of the reasons you really want to have a respectful contract process, because it could have gone sideways. And because we had good communication with a great counterparty, Rich Gribben was the counterparty agent, was the listing agent, professional and thorough the whole way through. And we handled it in a way that was very professional and thorough. And also, him and I agreed that if this is not going to be right, after closing, if something goes wrong, we will figure it out and make it right, even if the seller is not figuring it out. As somebody who cares about our community, cares about our business models, cares about our professionalism and respectfully to our colleagues, we're going to help figure out the problem, even if it's not papered over with a contract. It turned out to just be a leak from the water heater, so this is not a big deal.
Like tightened, I think it was. Yeah.
It was just something that needed to be tightened. It spilled maybe 2 or 3 gallons of water and sitting on top of plastic, so it wasn't even touching anything, which was great. We caught it when we did. And our buyers, to their credit, were not freaked out. They were amenable to working out a solution that just made sense. So it worked out, but it could have gone really wrong. And I have had deals where we papered over it with an amendment that later we realized that the structure of that amendment was not right. And so the example of that one is when the seller moved their stuff out, there was a huge amount of water damage from the window that the seller had to have known about and did not disclose. And it was hidden behind the couch. And so we said, look, we're not closing this. This is like new damage that was not there during our inspection. And so we need to figure this out. And we wrote an amendment that says the seller will have it repaired. But we didn't put when, we didn't put by who, and we didn't escrow money. And so those 3 mistakes. So when there's a loan involved, that's really messy, because in theory the lender has to approve all of the amendments to the they need to see it, right? But if the money's already there, how are you going to stop the closing from happening? Like, this is one of these like areas that I don't exactly have the right answer for. But in this particular story, the deal was cash. There wasn't a loan. So we could have easily put in place an escrow account, and we should have agreed on a mechanism. And the mechanism would have been seller deposits $10,000 into escrow, buyer chooses their contractor, work shall be limited to this scope, seller shall approve repairs prior to buyer authorizing repairs on the home. So that the seller sees that we're just fixing the water damage, we're not upgrading the house, it's with a reasonable contractor, and then the buyer controls the timeline, and it gets done within, let's say, 2 or 3 months, so that it isn't just hanging out there forever. And that isn't that hard to structure, but we screwed it up without putting all that mechanism in. We just said seller shall get fixed, and that was a mistake.
Especially when you got a shiesty seller.
The shiesty seller just wanted to send over their handyman, and their handyman had already screwed up a bunch of other things in the house, and so the buyer didn't like the handyman. And now we have a problem because the buyer thinks the handyman's incompetent. And that it was so messy and painful and back and forth and angry phone calls that I learned my lesson on that one, that it's best when there isn't that high degree of trust with a colleague like Rich, for example, that you may have to go into further steps of papering this in a way that's intelligent. But you also have to navigate the complication of a lender involved, which could delay closing, which could have other costs associated with it.
Yeah, that could snowball really quick. Thinking about the lender situation, they don't see amendment. Well,
they've already approved the loan.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they can unapprove the loan, and I don't know what happens if they get the amendment after closing. Well, the money's already been transferred. This is a great question for our lender friends. So if you are listening to this podcast as a lender and you want to tell us how this story works, like right before closing, if we suddenly have an amendment to the contract that maybe doesn't delay closing, but creates an escrow account to deal with a repair on the property that you've already funded, how does that work? Because the lenders don't have to we're not looking for the lender approval on an amendment. Once the money's already there, the money's already there. So how do you, as a lender, deal with that scenario? I don't have a good answer for you, other than I would think that anything that impacts the collateral, like let's say there's a giant hole discovered in the roof, the lender's going to say, even though we gave you the money, you cannot close because there's a giant hole in the roof in our collateral, and that needs to be repaired prior to the closing occurring.
I could say, you got to push closing or the whole, but I don't know if lenders would play with it, but escrowing a certain amount, right? Maybe from the seller's proceeds or from the selling agent's commission, as we've seen before.
That we've done before.
Yeah. But,
well, those are the
it turned out really well. It was positive. Yeah.
It was. So this story ends with a positive note. Everything worked out, but there are lots of ways that it may not work out. And it's something that, buyers and sellers should keep in mind when choosing an agent, is that the inexperienced agents or the unprofessional agents may not have a good solution for you when things go suddenly sideways at the finish line, and you are now relying on their expertise to help guide you through to a solution that works for everybody. And if there had been animosity in the negotiation process, it could have blown up the deal. And
easily.
So in this case, it all went smooth.
Yeah, that was really solid. But if you hear us in later podcasts be talking about good faith and respect to the other side and things, remember this part where we talked about a walkthrough where kind of those things had to be set up in order for things to go so well. It's a full circle moment in our real estate discussions.
I mean, it's also the reason we choose ethical clients, people with integrity, and projects where we can be successful, not Hail Marys that have no chance, because it's all in line with acting in a way that is ethical and professional, has integrity and commitment to values, and broadcasting that to the world also, I think, attracts those people to choose our brokerage as a company.
Ideally.
All right. Let's move on, Hamish, because we are running fast. So let's hit sales of the week. We have 6 of them to get through, and we're going to kind of hit these, I think, more high level than typical because of our time constraints. And our first one is 1498 King Avenue in Boulder.
Oh, we're going for it. All right.
Yeah, we are going for it.
Go for it.
You ready?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay,
I'll catch up.
I will come back to that. I will come back to market update.
Okay.
All right. So our first one, 1498 King Ave. It originally was listed in July of last year at 3.985, and it was withdrawn toward the end of the year, and then it was brought back on January 15th. It took another month and a half before it found a buyer, and it closed at 3.885. So not a huge discount to list, about $100,000 with a small concession for unknown things. A $4,000 concession, probably a hot water heater or furnace or some minor repair. That's what that looks like. But the house itself is fantastic. So it's tucked up behind Chautauqua, and it's generously sized for Boulder standards at 5,700 square feet. Not that old, built in 2007, has a 2-car attached garage, and has the preferred 2-story layout with most of the bedrooms on the upper. 1 bedroom on the main, which is excellent, could be used as a office or
guest,
because the primary
in-laws.
is on the upper. And a generous 13,000 square foot lot. So this is what I would say many people want in a family style house, and it's well designed. It's got some nice natural wood trim. The kitchen's dated, but it's not horrible. It's large and functional. I think changing the granite out will go really far to a more neutral or lighter color would help a lot. But what a classic house in such a great, rock solid A+ location. I like how they've got a nice Canon L lens visible in the office photo. I don't think that camera lives there permanently. But what a great house.
You think it's a blooper?
And I think it's probably the owner's camera. They're a photographer, and they just left it there, and they are going to be advised to remove it for showings.
Yeah. Looking at all the fish pictures in the office. But anyway.
But the takeaway for buyers or sellers is that even though this was priced right, it was listed late last year, and it took a while to find a buyer. But they stuck to their guns. They did not cut the price because they probably got regular updates on market conditions. They looked at the competition. I know the listing agent. She's very competent. I'm sure she kept her seller on top of what's happening in the market and how rare this type of house is in this type of location. So it's just a question of waiting for the right buyer. And in this case, that waiting took a long time. It took 260 days total from July of last year before the right buyer showed up. And it closed on April 16th, the day after tax day, at 3.885 or 678 a square.
Yeah, that's a fantastic location. It's catty corner from open space, from the Four Pines Trail.
This it's just spectacular because you can walk to all the events at Chautauqua. You can also walk into Enchanted Mesa on those trails, and that's just. It's a backdoor into all of this, the most attractive trails, at least from a eye candy perspective, right? Like you're into the Flatiron Trail system, which are the iconic photos you see of Boulder feature the Flatirons. That's in your backyard. And you have the cultural events at Chautauqua are amazing. There's no students typically in this type of area. And it's pretty, from a walkability perspective, it's a bit of a climb from baseline to get up here. So you're not going to get a lot of randoms, I think, on your street.
I don't think at all. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Good spot. Great house.
Good pick.
9258 Niwot Hills Drive is our next one in Niwot. Niwot's interesting because it's technically not incorporated. Even though it has its own address, Niwot is unincorporated Boulder County, which I didn't actually know until more recently. It was something that I just assumed Niwot had its own little municipal government. It doesn't. But it's an adorable historic town with a little downtown area. And then as development has moved east, you see these large homes that have been built over the last 25, 30 years. They're typically 5,000, 6,000, sometimes even bigger. And that development just keeps happening. Like Legend Ridge is right there to the west, the southwest Legend Ridge Trail to the southwest of this house. And
that's right.
So it's sort of the land of very large luxury houses. Most of the time what you see on the market is quite old and dated. So you'll get a 6,000 square foot house on a really large lot, which has a giant water bill, by the way, because they're often Kentucky bluegrass. And the houses that we often see on the market need to be completely updated. So you've got 6,000 plus square feet that needs updating, and it's often a better deal to buy something that's newer, like this 2025 house in a newer development, and it's even bigger at 7640. You know, in Texas, that's not a large house, but in Boulder, that is a very large house. It's a 5-bedroom, 7-bath with a 4-car attached garage. This is a luxury house at actually a pretty reasonable price. And the listing history is important to look at, because that really tells the story of how this market has changed, because this house is basically turnkey, right? Like, I don't even know if it's ever been lived in. It's gorgeous, and it was designed for a family, an affluent family, of course, at this price point. But what's super fascinating is that it actually hit the market in December of 2024. So listing in December was an interesting choice. They listed it at 4.85. And then after 3 months, they started cutting the price. And I can't even count how many price cuts it's had since it first listed. There's a lot. Like, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plus price cuts, until it finally came down to a final list price of 3.695. And interestingly enough, that price changed. That was in October of last year. It came down to 3.695, and they sold it for 3.675. So that basically was the bottom of the bottom. But boy, days on market, 500 almost, just under 497 to find a buyer. I think the developer of this, who is a real estate agent, is probably not going to do this again, right? Like, they came down $1 million from their expected sale price. You know, that was a luxury boat or a yacht or something that they gave up to make this thing happen. It took 500 days. Like, that's 500 days of not selling. That's 500 days of heating and cooling,
amount of carrying cost,
and cleaning, and and dealing with showings, and probably people lowballing you and annoying you.
Probably teething too, being a newer home.
Yeah, there's always some
maintenance.
So this is emblematic of the Niwot market. If you're looking at a home in Niwot, you should know there's often a lot of inventory, and they don't move fast. So yes, it is a lot of square footage for a modern house with a historic downtown, great schools, and you're 10 or 15 minutes outside of the city of Boulder, so you don't have any of the Boulder problems. Like, this house in Table Mesa would be add another $1 million to the sale price, right? Maybe 2. Maybe 3 at this size. It could be a double. Like, there's not a 7,000.
I think so.
Like,
dude.
In Kohler Mesa, would you even like? There are some houses that big, but they're super rare, and they're going to sell for a huge premium when they eventually sell.
I think too, this layout is like one of those classic functional layouts that you can't really even do, I think, in like a South Boulder area. Like, the larger homes that I think I've seen in South Boulder are a little more dysfunctional or like avant-garde. But this is like a family unit type of home.
Yeah, it's not avant-garde, that's for sure.
It's not.
There's nothing like, oh, look at this amazing design. It's a nice contemporary house, but it's not a work of art. It's it kind of has some modern farmhouse themes to it. It's fine. And Niwot's a great community, so it's for somebody that is moving into Niwot and needs this much space, maybe wants to be Boulder centric but not live in the city.
Yeah, good fit.
But I'm sure the seller is relieved after 500 days on market. Okay, let's hit our next one. And it is 2235 Vassar Drive. Speaking of which, in Table Mesa, 4,200 square feet, and sold for $763 a square. 5-bedroom, 5-bath, large lot, 16,000 square foot lot. But this lot is steep, and a lot of these houses on this street and in this location have structural stuff going on, because I don't think when these homes were originally developed in the 60s, the engineering was up to snuff on these steep hillsides. So if you buy in this location, you have to look really closely to make sure you're not buying something with structural issues. But this particular house was completely redone in 2018, so it looks like a new house, but it really isn't. It still has a build date of 1965, which means they almost certainly retained the original foundation. And if you are a buyer of that type of house, it's not wrong, but you want to look into it carefully and make sure that what they built from is rock solid. And the architect is well known that did this work, so I think it's well worth giving the benefit of the doubt. Awesome design, 3-story house. It's really a 2-story house with a walkout basement, but 5 bedroom, 5 bath, 4,200 square, 2-car attached garage, decent lot. But the listing history, this thing had been on the market originally March of 2025 at 3.925, and a bunch of price cuts later. End of the year last year, they had gotten the price down to 3.395 as they launched into January of this year. So that was the last price. It went under contract, it looks like a bunch of times. The history shows at least twice it seems to have gone under contract and come back out. But maybe it's just once. It's confusing. But if it does go under contract before you're up to bat, you want to understand, why did the first buyer terminate? And I strongly advise asking for a copy of the termination notice, because that will tell you with zero fluff and happy talk from the listing agent of why it actually terminated. And then you can, as part of your own due diligence, reach out to that buyer's agent that terminated and verify. And there's nothing illegal about it. There's nothing unethical about it. It's just common sense and solid due diligence, especially when you're spending $3.2 million on a piece of property.
And I mean, maybe it's got me, but I think it's a very attractive home, and very pretty. I quite like the deck opening up and the accordion doors in the living room, and I'm emotionally gotten by this home. So good on you for
Mark's a good architect. I've always loved his designs, and I've run into him a couple of times. I don't know how well he would say we know each other. I don't feel like we know each other really well, but I've seen his work, and his work has always been a little understated, like classic design, not trying to be something it's not. It's not trying to be grandiose. It has a subtlety to it, but also does things like highlight these spectacular views, right? And it's just...
And spaces.
These spaces are really pretty, and you've got the Flatiron views on one side with an open deck, and then you have amazing views of the city on the other side of the house. And it just took a long time for it to find a buyer, but not uncommon as you move above 3 million, as we'll talk about in the data in just a few minutes.
Perfectly done. Okay.
Okay, this next one we actually took our clients to see, 4195 Chippewa Drive in Fraser Meadows. I also know the listing agent, and he's a friend. We were very interested in this house, but felt like it was probably too dated for it to really work for our clients. And then when we saw it, we realized it's actually not that dated at all. The kitchen was the problem. It was sort of a galley kitchen, and yes, the kitchen was dated. Yes, it's dated, but not in a way that felt wrong, especially at the list price. It felt like it was very well taken care of. And in a way, the aspects of the home that felt dated but lovely was like 80% of it. The kitchen was the biggest problem, and opening it up was what we were talking about. But then when it became clear that we needed to make a decision really fast and be extremely aggressive, my client decided that they weren't going to go for it. It was just too much pressure, and the amount of work it needed was more than they want to entertain at this point in their life. But it's really interesting to see what it eventually sold for. So it was listed at 1.45, which was very clearly under market. Initially, the photos weren't available because the photographer hadn't gotten it done yet. So that created a delay to actually seeing the inside. So underpriced, an assumption that it's going to show poorly inside. But then the photos show up, and the photos look great. And then when we went and saw it, it looked really good, especially with a large lot. Like the dirt value of that lot alone, if the subdivision rules pass, is massive. So it sold for $260,000 over list.
Yeah.
Of course, cash, and closed in a very tight timeline, 21 days. A flurry of people that wanted this house, and somebody wanted it a lot more than others and got it for 1.71. Even at 1.71, I don't think it's badly bought. I think it has so much potential. I do hope they don't scrape it and put like 5 houses on this lot.
Especially Fraser Meadows.
I mean, if this new 1,200 square foot lot size thing passes, you could do the math on 2,300.
Oh, this backs to 4170 Pinion.
I know, it backs to our listing. You could literally put almost 16 lots on this thing, if that's what passes. If we have 1,200 square foot lots, but no lot can be less than 30%, so that's not really accurate. 30% of 2,400 or 2,351 is what. Let me get the math right. 2,351 times 30%. So, oh, sorry. I am missing a zero. 7,000 square foot lots is basically what you're looking at. So it could turn into 3, not 15. It would not surprise me if it turns into three luxury houses in 10 years are sitting here.
Oh, yeah. I really do like Fraser Meadows. That would be crazy to see.
Well, and the Pinion house behind it, we know is an architectural gem because we listed it. And what a spectacular property that is. Also subdividable, and that was under the old rules. Under the new rules, boy, it's going to be very interesting to see what people can do.
Yeah.
All right, our next one is 665 Tamarisk Court, also a property we saw with buyers, different buyers.
Wrote an offer for. Yeah.
Did we write an offer for this one? I thought we didn't submit it. We wrote it and never submitted it. Okay. Yeah. So our clients got really excited about it because it's on a cul-de-sac, fantastic house, checks like, I would say 8 out of 10 boxes for them. And where there were some deficits it was sort of like we're paying top dollar and dealing with some compromises that we are then going to have to spend more money to fix, and we don't really want to be at the top of our budget and spend more money to fix these problems. And those problems were things like a master bedroom with an office on it that wouldn't have been valuable, a tandem 3-car garage. So that was kind of they would have to double stack some of their stuff to make that work. The backyard had a basketball court with a lot of hardscaping, which they don't see as beneficial at all. I saw it as, wow, what a great party patio. We're moving basketball, right? And you just got the biggest party patio in the neighborhood. But, they didn't look at it that way. The biggest thing I loved about this house was the wraparound front porch. And the kitchen. The kitchen was fantastic, too. Really, really nice and spacious. And the listing agent, Courtney, did a great job in communications with her, really was professional. And I was as shocked as she was when we didn't submit, because we were right on the edge of submitting. And if we did, we probably would have gotten the house, because we were looking at likely offering full just to make sure we got it. And instead we bowed out, which may have created the negotiation gap that the buyer needed, because it closed for $30,000 below list, with a small concession of about $1,500 for something or other. So bought. I think it's a great house. I think the buyer got a great property. It's a property I would have bought. And that front wraparound that porch was really so emotionally magnetic that our clients almost jumped on it.
Wicked location as well. It looks like there's a little at the cul-de-sac just out to the bike paths and everything. Yeah.
Okay, this is our last one is 345 South 38th Street in Boulder in Martin Acres. And it's a basic ranch with a basement and 5 bedrooms, 3 baths, listed by our colleague Patrick Dolan, who we've done many deals with, all of which have gone smoothly with really great communication. And this is the first deal that I can remember where our buyers terminated. And they terminated on inspection for things they found. But we had originally had the property under contract for substantially lower than it closed for. I think we were at 1.15, Hamish. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it closed for 1.186.
That's right,
so you could say our clients did the seller a favor by terminating, because they were ready to sell it to our clients for, that's a difference of $36,000 difference. For that termination event, and it was the inspection that caused us to terminate. There were some oddities, and it just added up to too much. There was some stuff about the house for our buyers that felt like they expected higher quality at that price point, and there was some weirdness that came up on inspection that looked like things weren't done quite correct, or there was no explanation for why there was things the way they were. And that was just enough to push them over the edge emotionally to decide they don't want the house. There's too much going on with it. But I actually was glad that they terminated. And the reason I was glad was I'm really nervous about these houses that back to Martin Park, particularly close to the pavilion. Because in recent years, more people experiencing homelessness have been hanging out in that park. And often they're not just experiencing homelessness, they're experiencing mental health crises. And I'll never forget, for a while, there was an individual who was camping in that riparian corridor along the creek and using the bathrooms and hanging out in the pavilion, who also had some sort of mental health issue where they would shout at us and swear at us while we're playing like we try to play that's one of the courts we like to play tennis on. And it's really weird playing tennis while somebody is shouting profanity at you.
Probably a bit difficult too, I imagine.
And I mean, it's sort of funny because I'm just trying to do my best to ignore it, and my lovely bride is like, I cannot keep playing tennis with this going on. Like, this person literally shouting profanity at us. We have to stop playing. And so we stopped. She's a much more gentle soul. Apparently, I have a much higher pain tolerance. But that's why I was glad our client, and I had told them about that, right? I told them that, look, you got a little girl. She's 6.
Yeah.
Are you going to feel comfortable with that little girl playing in the backyard? Yes, you've got a fence, but what stops this is a fence you can hop over or climb over really easily, and you have people camping right behind this house. There's a little social trail there. I just want you to know that this is a risk. And currently there's nobody here, but I personally have seen people here having this happen. And typically I think the police department gets those camps cleared out really fast because the school's also there.
I think they move pretty quick on those ones, yeah.
But I would not, I used to love these houses that back to the park. And today I personally would not buy one because of, unfortunately, how our city manages the homelessness issue. But awesome house other than that, right? I thought it was great. If you were cool with that risk, fantastic property, and I'm really happy the sellers made more money than they would have if my clients had closed on it.
Yeah, and good example of like a nice updated ranch too, yeah. Yeah, with the basement. Nice egress, yeah.
It had some cool features to it. It had some unusual things too that I'm not going to mention on the pod. I don't want the city to come knocking. I thought the kitchen was really well done. I loved the kitchen.
Oh, they've got a pantry. It's always how are they going to work in a pantry? And that's been our 2 Martin Acres buyers, or our couple that we've been struggling with recently. It's nice
we're
to
not
see
struggling with them. Their project is a challenge.
We've been we're good, but trying to find a home with a pantry in Martin Acres? No. Well, that's it for sales. Yeah.
Let me just check here really quick on my schedule and time. We're still good. Let's talk about market conditions, because I skipped through it really fast and did not cover. I skipped through our agenda and I skipped over market conditions. So let's get into it. I've been noticing a number of our colleagues, Hamish, putting out market updates. And as somebody who used to do financial analysis for a boutique investment bank in New York City in public equities, as well as doing financial analysis for a private investment firm in Denver for several years, I pay a lot of attention to nuance. And sometimes I see things like weird dates they've chosen, but other times the data doesn't match at all what's actually happening that they're showing on these beautiful Instagram, slides or carousels. And I'm like, what are they? Is this real? Wait, hold on. At first I was excited. One of our colleagues had this slideshow that was talking about market conditions, and they are finally acknowledging that the upper end is really stagnant, which we've been talking about for like 2 years. Yeah. And finally they're like, oh yeah, the upper end is stagnant. And so I was like, okay, let's check their data. And when I checked their data, I was kind of surprised because the story they're telling is not exactly accurate. And I thought, let me just verify and give our clients and our podcast listeners the real skinny on what's happening. And so the first lens with which that we have to get clear about the lens, is we're talking about Boulder County, not just the city of Boulder. So that is all of Boulder County for this data. And we're only looking at single-family houses. We're not looking at condos or townhomes. And we're looking both at current market conditions as a percentage of what's under contract, and we are looking at sales volume. Sales volume is the number of sales. Dollar volume is the cumulative dollar amount of sold properties within a given tranche. So I'm not going to mention anything further of who's confusing these things up, but that's the difference between sales volume and dollar volume. Sales volume is a number of individual units that have sold. And
you could say sales even.
You could just say sales. Yes, you could just say sales. But when you say sales volume, that's what that refers to. Dollar volume is a better description of the cumulative dollars sold within a given price range. So first thing we're going to do is look at all houses sold this first quarter. And the first quarter is a good time period to look at year over year. You're looking at January 1st through March 31st. And this year there were 600 houses, single family detached houses sold in Boulder County. Last year, there were 570 during the same time period. So that's not a major change. We have 5.3% more sales volume or number of sales that have occurred this year, quarter over quarter. But then what gets interesting is if you slice it up by price range. And if you look at homes under $1 million, you get exactly the same number year over year, 384. Have sold year over year. Keep in mind the MLS, by the way, if you're running on iRes to go check my data, just keep in mind that agents will retroactively fix things. So in a week, these numbers may have moved one or two. Don't be surprised.
And on that, the post that we're talking about, the data was pulled on the 17th
of April.
Yeah.
Which is a weird choice. A very weird date to choose. All right, so we're now looking
at... A little TGIF post.
Well, all right, so zero change under $1 million, and then from $1 million to $2 million, and let me get clear, right? I'm saying $1 million to $2 million, but to make the numbers work, we are looking at under $1 million is really under 999,999. And then 1 million to 2 million is 1 million to 1,999,999. And then the next tranche, 2 to 5 million, is 2 million to 4,999,999. And the reason this is important is because if you don't do it this way, you will end up double counting the ones that are flat on the zeros.
And grab some overlap. Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
Did you have like a sneaking suspicion the first time you pulled the data and you checked?
When I started doing inventory or sales by price range, the numbers wouldn't add up. I would double check. I'd be like, okay, so there were 400 sales in the year, but when I break it out by price range, I'm getting 421 sales. I'm like, well, something's weird. And then I realized that the price ranges I was putting into my if statements on Excel were double counting the zeros. And as soon as I fixed it to 9999s, at the end of the tranche, it always matched, and so you have to do that to make sure it matches. So all right, so under $1 million, and I'm going to colloquially call this under $1 million, but I already explained it's under 999,999.
I actually wonder if that's part of this, but anyway, sorry.
384, so no change, and then 1 million to 2 million. There was an increase this year. Okay. Of 19.1% increase year over year. There were 156 sales this year, 131 last year, so that's a 19% or 19.1% increase. And that $2 to $5 million range, 57 sales this year, 50 last year, that's a 14% increase. Is that really 14%? I'm like double checking the spreadsheet. Yeah, that's 14%. And then above 5 million, and this is what I keep telling people, like, forget about all this luxury advertising that makes you think like Boulder has turned into
scarcity
$10 million houses.
Yeah.
Like, this is agents that are just they're shotgunning and spending money on fancy advertising for extremely
they're doing their jobs, but
yeah, they're doing their jobs. But this is extremely low transaction volume. Last year there were only 5 sales above 5 million, and this year there were 3. This is only in the first quarter, keep in mind. Not the full quarter. So that's a decrease of 40%. But when you're looking at such small sample sizes, it would literally take 3 buyers to have visited Boulder that are interested in these $5+ million deals, and if they bought them, we would have seen a sales increase. So when you have a very low sample size, you have to take the data with a huge grain of salt. But one thing that is very clear is the percentage under contract. It tells a very illuminating story. So this data is relevant to today, which is April 22nd. And in the overall market, all prices, 33% of the market's under contract. Under $1 million, it's 41.4%. So that still means that 59% of houses roughly are available. 40% are under contract. That's an absorption rate that's very active. Okay. They say a healthy market has 5 or 6 months of inventory. That's more like 2 months of inventory, a little over 2 months. And in the 1 to 2 million range, you're at 35.2% of homes that are currently under contract, and that's getting a little close to balanced, but still is favoring the seller. And then above 2 million is when it suddenly switches over, and there you start to see that that the market gradually switches over to a buyer. To the buy side, to where the leverage is really with the buyers. And in the $2 to $5 million range, which admittedly is a very broad range, if you were our client sitting down, we would do it by every, or even $500,000.
We'd narrow it down.
Narrow it down to $1 million or $500,000 or 100,000 tranches to see what's really happening. But in the $2 to $5 million zone, there's 15.1% under contract. And this is the part that is going to be really painful for you luxury home sellers. 58 houses currently on the market, 2 under contract. That's 3.4% of existing inventory currently today, April 22nd. That means 96.6% are sitting there going, why is my agent not selling my house? What's happening? How many showings did I get this week? What's wrong? Tell me about your marketing. Like, it's got to be infuriating, right? If you're the listing agent, but this is also what you signed up for, is to be the
first finger to be, or first pointed at. To be finger pointed at you, to be the punching bag of the seller. There you go. It's
also why the listing agents will make you sign a long listing. Like if I'm listing a $5+ million house, I'm not signing up for 12 months. It's got to be 24 or 36 months because this is going to take a lot. If we're lucky, it's going to sell fast. And if we did our job right, maintain it. This is a long relationship we're likely to have, unless you want to fire sale it. And very few people want to fire sale the listing. So 3.4% is what's under contract right now, above $5 million, and that is only 2 out of 58 houses currently on the market in Boulder County.
And many, many, many months supply.
And by the way, if you would like to see me do this data live, right, if you don't just rely on pretty pictures on Instagram or something else, if you are my client, I will do this live for you relative to your specific situation, where you're looking.
Yeah.
Like we're currently looking for ranch-style properties for a client. We're learning the market together because and I'm trying to help educate about the difference between property that has water rights and property that doesn't have water rights. It's a long journey of partnership and learning and educating. Some of which is educating me too, because the last time I did this was 5 or 6 years ago, and now we're getting serious again, and the market has shifted, so we have to re-educate what's really going on. And that's important to be able to do live, on a video call, or in person, if you want your client to be smart about what they're buying, and not just push them into it on emotional factors, which some agents are prone to doing.
Yeah, good call.
All right,
and
that's
also
my market
shaking
update.
Off the rust. It's a good market update. I think I'm gonna have.
You could be critical.
Oh no, I actually think it's pretty solid. When we're like down into percentages, it's difficult. But like if we hit a 33% or something, we could be like 1 in 3, or like a 50%, we could be like 1 in 2. I think that's easier to contextualize when you're listening to it versus reading. But oh no, we're cutting this out and checking it on YouTube. So.
Excellent. Well, look, the take home is if you're under $2 million, it's not a buyer's market in Boulder.
Yeah.
It's still a seller's market. But as you get above $2 million, the market dramatically shifts in your favor. And if you're shopping in that zone, you should not feel pressure. There's a lot of options. You should take your time, get well educated, kiss a few frogs before you find your prince. And your agent should be supportive of that process and also encourage you to, when the house is really the right one, to negotiate aggressively. You don't need to pay list or more than list unless it's really clear that there are factors driving that. And if you can't trust your agent to give you good guidance on that, you chose the wrong agent.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. Come find me. Come find Hamish. Come find Ian or Sophie. All of us are cut from the same cloth. And get it. Like, we're here to advise, not push. And it's based on real data for what's happening in the market, not on what we feel is happening.
That same thing, before we get too long-winded, but where you're talking about like breaking it out for the price tranches and stuff, you talked about, reach out to me if you wanted that. We do that for properties too. Like we'll break down characteristics and then say, okay, well, how likely are you to see the same property matching your specific criteria? And we can get really granular with that. And without going any further and giving away secret sauce, we geek out and it works out. So we geek out and work out. I don't know. So news? Shameless self-promotion.
I think it's time for shameless self-promotion, Hamish, and you can lead this one since you led the charge on it.
Yeah, this one we have been working kind of in the behind the scenes. Let me get this time code down to put together a new website, and it kind of quietly released last week. And there have still been a few little bugs and whatnot that we've been working out, but overall, I think everyone's just very excited for it. It seems to be, well, it appears to be. First off, it looks great. I think it's much more navigable, and then it hosts our content, I think, in a little bit more of a graceful way. So when you hear us talking about the newsletter, that's still there in the header is the newsletter button. You click on it, it'll take you right there to where you can sign up and see our newsletter where we talk about active listings and some deep market dives, what's going on in the world. But for content that we can post publicly, we have now kind of aggregated it to all one place. So the blog posts that can be public will be there. I know I'm talking to Ian. He's been interested in doing kind of like a monthly market report. So you might start seeing that in the blog section. Our YouTube's there, as well as our Instagram. Some of the other social medias we're kind of cross-posting, so we might add them later on. But overall, it should be a very nice user experience whenever you go over there. It should be easy on the eyes, and it's just been a lot of fun getting it together, and I'm quite proud to have it out, and I think you are too, Oz. Really glad with who we went with. Yeah,
I'm really grateful for the work you did on it. You did a fantastic job. It is a huge improvement in terms of our web presence compared to our previous site, and it still every site has bugs and issues, and we're working our way through them. If you, as a listener or viewer, want to go check out the House Einstein website, and you find any bugs, please let us know. We're going to fix them.
Stress test it.
But that is, I think you still deserve some kudos and praise, Hamish, for leading that and taking it from soup to nuts. Which is what I asked you to do, and you did it. So thank you. Good job.
What for me, what's kind of sweet is, and like the old website had the same, like my pictures were on there, but the way they're implemented on this new website, I'm like, oh yeah, I took that. Like I don't know what kind of sauce they edited it with or anything, but I'm like, oh nice. And there's still, I think there's like 1 or 2 stock images left that I've got to go replace, but that was one of the. We shopped, of course, like who we used, and I went and called the websites that this company had demoed. I called the real estate agents behind them. I was like, what's your feedback? And one of them was, their stock imagery is terrible. Like, as soon as you can, put in your own stuff. And I was like, you got it. And so that was, it's great to see all the pictures and stuff on there. Yeah.
All right, okay. Well, let's talk about the news. And if you were paying attention to social media this week, you probably realized that there was an improvised explosive device that was removed on April 19th, my actual birthday, near Ponderosa Way, and it says in unincorporated Boulder County. It's really close to Netherland, right? So you're in the mountains.
I'm glad you know where, yeah.
And the call was received at 8 a.m., and it took 11 hours from that time of call arriving just after 8 a.m. for the technicians to report that the devices were safely transferred into a containment trailer. And as far as we know from the press release, it was legit. Like, these were actually IEDs. Normally, when you hear this type of reporting, you hear that they investigated and it wasn't. But in this case, there were 5 devices, and the components are consistent with potentially functioning devices. So the entire neighborhood was cleared out at noon. Or that was when they started clearing. They ordered the neighborhood to clear out, and for 7 hours the neighborhood could not get back in until they lifted the shelter in place order at 7. Kind of disturbing to have a bomber who has not been identified or arrested or anything, just the devices were found.
Yeah, I think so. This I didn't hear about it aside from like a little Louisville like Facebook group. I didn't see it on any news or like really any of my other social medias and stuff. And I was like, wow, that's really strange that this one is like what gets like quiet, kind of under the rug. But goodness gracious, there's a little bit like if you see a suspicious item or package, don't touch it or move it, leave the area, call 911, which one would anticipate is like common sense, but imagine being the person opening the case and like, okay, I'm gonna call the police now, and just backing away slowly, like
you see something sitting on the roadside and you stop and you check it out and it looks like it's 5 IEDs that are sitting there. Boulder's not known for militias and anti-government organizations, but that doesn't mean we don't have our own share of crackpots. And I love living in the mountains, but the mountains often attract people that have a certain antisocial mindset.
Disposition,
so
yeah.
It's concerning. I hope they figure out who built these and take them into custody.
What the story is?
Like, at least for a mental health check. Like, that is deeply disturbing. And as far as I know, there have been no threats made against, city officials or government offices or anything like that.
Actually, this is 5 hours ago, Oz.
Really?
Or 20 hours ago. They've identified individuals. Yep. Okay. Oh. This is breaking news now.
Breaking news.
Members of the Boulder County Regional Bomb Squad responded to Ponderosa Way. The items were found. 5 devices determined destruction components to be used. No, okay. I'm just fake newsing everyone. 5 devices. 5 suspected homemade. I'm so sorry. Should I cut that?
No,
that was just
bad. Breaking news. There's no breaking news.
Yeah.
We make mistakes. There's no point in
breaking news. Nothing ever happens.
But there's a photo. It was a man walking their dog who found the metal case containing what appeared to be 5 IEDs. The photo, did you see the photo? Well, I don't know.
Of the folks in the like Hurt Locker get-ups?
No, there's a photo of what looks like a case with 5 IEDs in it, but I don't know if that's a legit. It's from an account called the Colorado Flyover. I don't know if that's real. That could be AI making those.
Could be.
Yeah, the Colorado Flyover, which I mean, it's got a yellow tag. I don't know what the heck that means, but I think this is just an illustrative photo. I don't think it's actually the photo of the device. It's just an AI version of what it could look like. Anyway. The sooner they figure out who this was, the better. It's deeply disturbing.
I think, yeah.
And these people are still out there, right? Okay, so there's that disturbing piece of news. And then, Hamish, you want to talk about the Dark Horse? Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe this is our cap on the Dark Horse coverage saga. Let me get the time code down real quick. But they have now announced their location. I think we alluded to the rumored location and all that. But they will be off of Highway 6 or Highway 36 and McCaslin in Louisville. And if I'm gonna pull that up, I think that's where the old Outback Steakhouse was.
Okay, but where? So they announced it on a Facebook post.
Yeah.
And yes, they're getting the bathroom doors. That's the most important piece.
I know everybody's very concerned about that. So,
they haven't said exactly where it is, though, have they?
No, my conjecture, my suspicion is that it's going to be where DJ's watering hole is. Yeah. which is, I personally, I think for like signage standpoint and everything, is going to be really solid for the Dark Horse. And then, you know, you like, everybody's like, oh well, Dark Horse is kind of like a student place. What about CU? Well, actually, the same Facebook group where I learned about the IEDs was like, hey, there is a section in Louisville off of 36 and McCaslin where they're planning to put student housing, an 8.85 acre property. It looks like almost directly across from where we suspect the Dark Horse to be. There's going to be a student housing property that I'm paywalled on and wasn't when I found the link.
Well, so. I mean, the old theater is getting converted into CU stuff, so that's not very far. And DJ's actually closed, so it wouldn't surprise me if they, you know, that's the old Cinnabar. DJ's, it's a really large space, and it closed, so maybe they're taking over DJ's. It's not just it's near DJ's. It is in the building. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. So, and then, you know, conspiracy brain, D for dark, and then J is only one letter away from H in the alphabet. So you've got the DH, Dark Horse, watering hole. Oh, it all makes sense.
Very Thank you. All right, let's move on to lot splitting. So, as we've been talking about extensively, the new comp plan is development oriented and will be reclassifying all of Boulder's zoning into two neighborhoods. And now we have a House Bill 26-1308 that says lots could be smaller than 1,200 square feet as long as they're at least 30% of the original lot size. And that is in direct conflict with the 7,000 square foot minimum in Boulder's low density residential zones. So council wants to exempt some parts of Boulder for wildfire prone areas and flood zones. And some people, I suppose, are looking for an entire exemption for the city. But so this is a little bit in conflict with the comp plan, but the directionality is still very clear. And that is, it's a directionality towards much more development. And where we end up on minimum lot sizes could be a little bit bigger than 1,200. I think what I saw originally was closer to 3,000, and I'm going on memory here. I don't have that in documentation in front of me, but even that would allow a lot of Boulder's lots to subdivide. And I mean, we're talking about the biggest building boom that Boulder has seen since probably the 70s when Table Mesa was finished up. Right, 60s and 70s. That was the last time we saw that much development happen in Boulder, and I'm convinced that's what we're looking at with the combination of what's happening at the state level, at the comp plan level, and at the city council level. It's all like writing on the wall, and it appears to be no off-ramp for this. So I think it's baked in at this point. And even the comp plan commentary period is closed. So buckle up, Boulder. We are on this ride, and there's no getting off. And I'm not leaving Boulder, by the way. I love our community, but I'm going to keep fighting for at least vocalizing my staunch opposition to just mindless development without any sort of like awareness of what the impact of that many more people will be living in our community. But hey, it fills that $500 million funding gap.
Isn't it odd that like this is, from my read, completely not what the comp plan is? And I was like, well, maybe it wasn't city council, maybe this is the planning board. But no, it says here the city council directed city lobbyists to seek amendments, and then there's
to seek an amendment to the HB 1308 about the minimum lot size. But that's because we're working on our own stuff. I think that's what you can read between the lines is that ours are going to be bigger than 1,200 square feet, but are still going to be way smaller than 7,000. And I think they're going to basically be around 3,000 is where we're going to end up.
I'm thinking that kind of reads right. And then, I mean, for wildfire prone areas and flood zones, well, that's Boulder. But then they also want a broader exemption for Boulder as a whole. I think you're right on the 3K square feet.
Boulder wants to control its own destiny. That's what that is. But the destiny is still lot sizes that are going to be 3,000-ish square feet, or who knows. But the answer is still clear. Development, lots of subdivisions, lots of duplexes, lots of much smaller houses on our lots. And I think they're probably going to have to repeal solar access because I don't know. It's going to be narrow.
That's the whole thing.
Like I think they're going to repeat. Like I think they have to get the development they want. They're gonna want that to go away. I don't know how that works with what the comp plan wants and what council wants and what staff really wants. The solar access ordinance is directly in the way of development. So we'll see. You've heard it here first. I predict it's going away, and I predict that they're going to vote it out in one city council meeting before the public realizes what's happening, and get it done in one council meeting, and the vote will be like two opposed and everyone else in favor, and then it'll be done before we can fight it.
Yeah, they'll There's no really some nice verbiage for explaining what they'll do to get it through, but they'll get it through. Also, just as a whole, can you imagine like anywhere where 1,200 square foot? Because like outside of Boulder, like say Westminster doesn't fight this or however it goes, like I could fit 5 homes on my lot.
Not if each lot has to be 30% of the original lot size.
Oh yeah, there's that.
So at most you could do 3 lots, but still 3 on your existing house is what we're on your existing lot. I love Japan. Japan has lots of very small houses and historic, beautiful places. It's possible. I just don't think it's probable with how we live our lives in the West.
And how much we commute. And
Boulder was laid out for cars at a city that was probably 50,000 people. Not a city of even 100,000 people. And we're at 107-ish, and we're probably looking at getting to 150, 160,000 in the not so distant future. And unless we figure out how to fit all those people in to our roadways, I mean, maybe the world's going to change. Maybe everyone's going to get rid of their cars and we're all going to ride in robo-taxis. I mean, maybe that's the future, and that might solve it all. Who knows?
We'll be around to watch it. We'll be around to get there, though.
You might be. I might be exiting early from this life.
Dude, the way you live, you're going to be like 130, 140.
No way. All right, so let's hit this next piece, and that is metro districts have been approved in the city of Boulder. So as a real estate agent, I've often advised my clients that special taxing districts or metro districts are really just for new development outside of the city when they needed to raise capital to fund the infrastructure to attach the new development to our city services like water and sewer. And council has now approved infill metro tax districts. So this will allow for, and it's specific just to commercial. That's something that's really clear. It has to be 90% commercial in order for it to be allowed in the development. But if it's 90% commercial, 10% residential, then you can put in place a special tax district to fund the development's infrastructure costs. And where this particularly applies in the city of Boulder is to this new theater that they're talking about building on the east side of town. And this is through a developer called is it Amber Creek? And it's a 2,500 seat performing arts venue with 500 units of housing. So it's the assessed value, by the way, that determines and total square footage. It has to be 90% commercial in order for it to qualify for a metro district. I would not be surprised to see that number change. But anyway, this is going to help the Conscious Bay Company build this 4-block mixed-use project in East Boulder. And there's links to it in the description. It's where is this project? It's 3550 Frontier Avenue, so Pearl Parkway and Foothills Parkway, where right now you see a bunch of commercial and industrial stuff. Sanitas Brewing is over there, so that's where they're talking about building
Sanitas Brewing's closing.
It is, but one of the founders is starting a new business right there. So the name will change, but there'll still be a brewing company there. At least that's what the latest news is on Sanitas Brewing. So 500 units of housing, 180 events a year, and capacity of 2,500 people, which is a lot bigger than the Dairy is, the arts center that I'm on the board for. Okay. All right, we already talked about the comp plan comment period closing. And our last piece of news, which we're just going to cover in 60 seconds, I think we already touched on it, was that...
It is the week of 420, I guess.
It is the week of 420.
And Snoop Dogg.
And Snoop, we're going to tie into Snoop too, but the DOJ is expected to... This is breaking news. the DOJ is expecting to ease marijuana restrictions, turning it into a Schedule 3, not a Schedule 1 drug, which I strongly am in favor of. And the reason this is important for our podcast is that when Colorado decriminalized, we saw a big influx of people that were here for medical marijuana and then also for recreational marijuana. It's raised a ton of money for our community. And the approach to taxation in this particular case, I sound so anti-tax. I'm pro-tax for this because this is something that it's sort of a vice tax, and it was not going away, and it certainly wasn't creating the harm that had been prescribed.
Like a public safety,
the whole reefer madness starting in the 50s and 60s. That nonsense was first racially tinged, and also put a lot of people in jail that should never have been in jail. And all of the people I know that are potheads are like chill and unmotivated. Like these are not people causing violent crime either. So at least not en masse, right? I'm sure there are cases. So tax it, right? What you want.
Everybody who's drank water has murdered someone, like.
So the principle is what you want more of, you subsidize, and what you want less of, you tax. So if you want less marijuana use and you want to use those funds for something beneficial like schools, you tax it. And that's been a phenomenal success for the state of Colorado. And now it looks like there will be more states that likely will legalize now that the feds are relaxing their designation of marijuana as a Schedule 1 drug. So that's awesome. And maybe some of the people that just moved here for the pot scene will feel freedom to move elsewhere for the pot scene.
I'll say, man, the dispensaries and suppliers and everything that started in Colorado, once this stuff rolls out, it's going to be ka-ching, right? To start establishing footholds in new states and everything. It'll be interesting to see. I'm sure there's already, marijuana billionaires and stuff out there, but...
for a while, Hamish, it was the Wild West. It was crazy. Yeah. And real estate related to grows exploded, and people were growing in rental houses and causing all sorts of mold messes, and the people were getting busted for grows in houses because their power bills were so high. Commercial real estate, anywhere you could grow, suddenly it turned into a grow. It was crazy for 5 years once we legalized. So I would like that craziness to go elsewhere, and I think it's great that we're no longer going to treat, as and I frankly think some of these other drugs that are Schedule 1 should also be moved to Schedule 3, like LSD.
There's some out of touchness, yeah.
And the president recently this week is I don't know exactly what he passed, but basically is greenlighting more psychedelic research for mental health issues and addiction in particular. And I think that there's huge potential in that space, particularly around ibogaine. And I'm not an expert in this. I just peripherally follow it, but some liberalization, careful liberalization of our drug laws would be really beneficial to our country, and I think it's a step in the right direction. So,
credit where it's due.
We need to wrap it, Hamish. So let's hit our carve-outs, and you need to launch the way with your hot networking project.
Okay, shout out to this unnamed client who donated. Provided, gifted.
Gifted. Hamish.
Gifted.
You could initialize him if you want, but yeah, gifted.
TH, shout out for gifting. So there's a company called Ubiquiti, and I don't know, their name convention isn't immediately obvious, but he gifted a PoE Ethernet 16-port switch and Ubiquiti UDM Pro router, as well as a U6 access point and 3 cameras. So what does this all mean? The router is what negotiates the internet coming into your home and gives it to the devices in your home. And pretty much everyone, honestly, including me, I don't need this. This is incredibly overkill. It's like an enterprise grade thing, but it is, as someone who I think who's reasonably DIY, but has lately been mitigating the extremes of my projects. Like I'm trying to keep things a little bit a lower scale of DIY projects. This stuff's been a lot of fun. So I can track all of the traffic that comes into the house and all of the traffic that leaves, and see which device is using the most internet, or if it's talking to anything suspicious. And more kind of practical is that this has internet backup, or it's able to handle that. So I use Google Fi for my mobile carrier, and it turns out that they come with like a data SIM, and I was able to get a data SIM and then get a internet router that takes that data SIM, and I can get internet out of it. But I'm capped on data from my Google Fi, and my main internet is is fiber. And so I've got like my main internet and then my data internet, and the router will test both of them continuously, and if one of them fails, it'll switch over to the other, which has been really nice because I've had now 2-3 day long internet outages, and it's just getting pretty unacceptable at this rate. And it's all from like construction and stuff. It's not even the internet provider's fault, though they do provide a credit if you call and complain. So I don't know. It's cool. I've got like the server rack in the closet now, and there's a bunch of blinky flashy lights and cables and everything, and it scratches the nerd brain a ton. I'll get to bringing it back to housing to an extent is I need to wire the home for Ethernet now. So internet cables throughout the house, and that's been an interesting kind of thought experiment of like which room needs how many ports, and where am I going to store the like internet brain in the house. And then, in a little while I'll follow up about fishing cable and going into the attic and drilling and doing all that. But as it is right now, I have like Ethernet running through the house, through the hallways, down the steps, and it's really funky. But yeah, this is probably very niche audience stuff, but it is.
I don't know who's into this, Hamish, but yeah. It's cool that you're into it. I'm excited that this is your Carveout.
Yeah,
I do have to.
Thanks for listening.
Yours into
go for it,
because I've got to be off this call in 60 seconds to jump on another one.
I thought yours was 2:30. Yeah, you're 2:30.
Is it? Oh, you're right. You're right. My apologies. My apologies. I will take that back. Keep going on the network.
No, that's pretty much it. I really should stop. If we want. Next time I have a topic like this, you go first so we don't lose listeners.
Where's the window with you in it? Can you even see me? I've lost the window.
I can see you because you're just fine.
Okay. I just got to find where I put this window. Too many windows. Hopefully it does not. Oh, there you are. Okay, great.
TMW.
So carve-outs are anything but real estate necessarily, right? It's just whatever is top of mind. And this past weekend, I had a fantastic birthday weekend. That's what's top of mind for me. And my wife took me out to a comedy club, and then we enjoyed the atmosphere at License Number 1. She took me out for an amazing steak dinner. And then on Monday, this is sort of funny. This is like a month ago, she messages me that Snoop is playing Red Rocks. And I said, "Are there tickets?" She's like, "Seriously?" I'm like, "Yeah." Are there tickets? She's
Why
like,
not?
Yeah. And it turns out there were tickets. So we got tickets and we went to see Snoop. And I first heard Snoop's music when I was 16 years old. And I remember it almost as clear as day when two of my friends got a hold of the album and we were talking about the music on it, and this is the era where there was like parental advisory. You had to be a certain age to buy this music. God, can you imagine? And we got a hold of it and we listened to it nonstop, and we would say things to each other that were slang from the album, and it was so silly, 16-year-old boy silliness. But it was so different too, and so visceral and raw and legit. And I remember feeling like years later that maybe Snoop was not really authentic. This was like some produced version of inner city culture and music that I was just getting sold to. And then and then I listened to that Joe Rogan podcast. I don't know how many years ago this was, when he talked about when he had Snoop on. And I like to listen to podcasts while I'm doing other things, going for a run, bike ride, working around the house, doing some video editing, whatever. I'm listening to a podcast. And I listened to that whole podcast, and I came away realizing that this man is very authentic. Like, he is not pretending to be something he's not. And as a business practice, being authentic and in life, a life practice, being who you really are is so important in life. You cannot outcompete. Nobody can outcompete you if you are being who you really are. And what I realized about Snoop is this is really his persona. Like, it's not made up. And so when the opportunity came to watch, or I guess to enjoy his show at Red Rocks on Monday night, I said, yeah, let's get tickets. It's my birthday weekend. So on 4/20, we went to see Snoop. And I will say that show was amazing. He did not force us to listen to like his latest album because he wants that artistic expression to be shared with so many people. Instead, he gave the audience what it wanted, which was like a rundown of his greatest hits in a chill and fun and playful way that was just awesome. And he didn't go on at 10 o'clock at night. We went late. Like, we had
That's
dinner.
That's the best part.
He went on at like 8 o'clock or 8:30. We were out of there by 10. We were home by 10:30, which is astounding. I didn't think he was going to go on till 11. Like, I was prepared. I had like my puffy jacket. We had blankets. Like, we were ready to stay. And in fact, we had joked that maybe we should drive the van and just spend the night in the parking lot because we're gonna have a contact high from being in this audience. And it turned out to not be the case. We were home by 10:30, and we had such a fun night. So, mad props to Snoop for capping out my birthday weekend with a lot of fun. It was just a fun show. So, dude, props for that.
I've just connected the dot that your birthday falls like right on or before 4/20. Has that been like a theme? Not like that. Like friends that are, I guess. Are they like, oh, bro, like you're on 4/20 or anything like that?
Not really. Actually, Earth Day. I know that's so nerdy. It was more of a theme for like. I've got a bunch of friends whose birthdays, an ex-girlfriend, a really close friend of mine, all within a couple of days of each other, and it was just like a springtime event. But no, marijuana has never been a part of my life in any material way. So 4/20 parties, like,
insignificant.
Not our thing. But yeah, thanks for asking that question.
Okay, maybe this is more value, but like people like Snoop Dogg are so strong in their personality that they seem like they've got to be produced, right? And then, like, when you find out that they are authentically them, you're like, holy cow. Like, this person is so through and through that it feels like it has to be fake, almost.
This is not Vanilla Ice. This is not Milli Vanilli. This is somebody who really is who they are. And I was so impressed by that. And I had so much fun at the show. The 16-year-old me would never have imagined in 2026... I would be going to a Snoop Dogg show. Nor how much would the tickets have costed. That would have blown my mind too. But that's inflation more than anything else. So yeah, Snoop Dogg. I think this is a pretty good spot to wrap up. That's my Carveout. It's time to thank our audience for sticking with us for just over 2 hours for this podcast. We deeply appreciate all your comments and your feedback. Your patience if we say something that may not be quite accurate, or if I go off the deep end on a rant about city council. I appreciate your patience in listening to that. And also, if you do like this content and would like to learn more about the brokerage that sponsors this podcast, you can visit us at houseeinstein.com. House Einstein also has a YouTube account and Instagram and Facebook and X and Blue Sky and LinkedIn. You'll also find my personal socials if you're interested in that. You can always visit us at houseeinstein.com. And thank you so much for joining us today.